I want to pick up on something that was mentioned at during the last program. This idea of alignment and the comment that was made. Some people say we like the way things are. Let's keep them that way. But we all know that's a losing strategy because nothing is going to stay the same. Two of the smartest people I've ever met in my life, Dennis Winters, economist for the state of Wisconsin in the Department of Workforce Development, and Dale Knapp, director of Forward Analytics, the premier research firm in the state, can tell us what we are going to look like in 10, 20, 30 years with great accuracy. If we like it, we should do exactly what we're doing now. But if we don't like it, and I would submit to you, in almost all cases, we will not like what we see in 20, 30, 40 years. The time to take action is now. So with that, and without going through what we are going to look like in 10, 20, 30 years, what action? And while I freely admit I am not a fan of the Royals, if you had a magic wand and could do anything, what is it we would do to position our state for future success? And it's unfair, but I will start with the lady. Jenny.
So the obvious answer is invest in higher education and education, right? Did you expect anything else to come from my mouth? But seriously, I think action is the key here. I think even today, in my mind, there's so much discussion, so many paths, so many things we can do. But we need to focus and start with the champions, right? There are some people that are passionate that we may not be able to get every single last person on board to take action, but take action in the circles that you were able to and move forward. And then that energy builds from there. And so at UW-Stevens Point, there's a strategic doing effort that just launched in the entrepreneurship ecosystem that I think is one of those examples of just starting, right? Just starting to get together in smaller groups to build a network and ecosystem around entrepreneurship throughout the region. And that, to me, it's one way to focus and take some steps forward and then build up from there. So I'm going to keep it brief because there's a large panel, but take action.
We'll go right down the line, but announce who you are because we're not in order of the introductions. And while education is clearly number one, Jenny, the other number one, and I think Josh, you'll probably tell us this, county government has all the answers, and you'll explain to us what they are.
Yes, I have all the answers, just ask. I'm a politician, the son of a minister, so this will be a quick 30-minute sermon. So I don't think you can answer your question succinctly without thinking just a minute about the data. Dale Knapp in this room would tell us 20 years from now, we're going to be depopulating. And almost nobody who's alive today in America has lived through that before. Not that it's never happened in American history, or certainly world history. And to the point from the last panel, this is not everywhere in the globe, but it's a big portion of the globe. And for the United States and for Europe, it's a problem, and for China, it's a crisis. It's hundreds of fold worse than it is for the United States. So I think actually education and I think housing, I think prosperity in the next 50 years needs to be looked at through a different lens. And what do I mean by that? What I mean by that is we're so used to the system, the infrastructure, the processes that we've built, whether it's education, whether it's county government, whether it's business. We're so used to doing the same things we've always done, the same way we've always done them, that it's going to be a shock to our system to have to figure out how to do it with no people. Because that's what we're facing, is 25 years of no people. Earlier, the panel, 2 panels ago that I was on, we talked about what is the biggest challenge of recruiting and bringing people. It's that there are none. There are fewer and fewer millennials and Gen Zers to replace the massive amount of baby boomers that are leaving, retiring at 3 million baby boomers per year. That clip will stay on until the baby boomers fully leave the workforce. So we just have to think differently than we've thought in the past. And I think that involves a number of different things. Let's use the UW system as an example, because I absolutely agree. The way for us to continue prosperity, to continue to pass the American dream on, is education. If you look at 100 years from 1900 to the year 2000, all of our major progress was because we started to graduate 8th grade. Then we started to graduate all kids through high school. Then we started to give undergraduate degrees at higher rates than we've ever seen. That progression needs to continue, but when you have a population, we're graduating in about 500 students per year out of the West Bend School District right now. 500 graduated last week Saturday. The 7th grade class has 350 kids in it, and that stays about flat to the kindergarten class. When they get up to the UW system, and I know the UW is talking about this, and I know technical colleges are talking about this, when that happens, how do we take this massive amount of resources that we've built out over 60 years for, at the time, the baby boomers, which are a much larger generation, how do we apply that in scope and scale in a way that still delivers highly effective education, and yet to a much smaller audience? That's hard. We currently have 2 parallel tracks of education. Used to be vocational education in this type of facility and liberal arts education in a UW Stevens Point type of facility. Now we've allowed them to do exactly the same thing. Oh, and by the way, our high schools my son graduated with 12 credits to go to UW La Crosse. We have to completely transform the way that we're thinking about competing for the most precious resource, which is human talent. For us in Washington County, that starts with housing, but higher education is right at the top of the list. My county, from the state line in Wisconsin, when I started as county executive 3 short years ago, from the state line on the east side of the state all the way up to Green Bay, my county was the only county that didn't have access to a 4-year higher education institution, like in our property. Everybody else had one. Since then, Cardinal Stritch is closed, Silver Lake College is closed, Concordia University has shut down its satellite campuses. The private sector, the market, the education market is responding. Is the rest of society going to? And I think you can play that out in every different aspect, in every different industry. How are we going to start thinking differently now for a time when we just have less people?
Yes, sir.
Cheery to follow. For me, it begins with leadership. Personally, I have 5 qualities of leadership that I look for in every leader. Number 2 is to be a thoughtful listener. Not just a good listener, but a thoughtful listener. And number 4 in my list is the best leaders that I've ever known don't consider themselves experts. They consider themselves students first. They don't have all the answers. There's a young lady in the back, I don't mean to single you out, who was talking about housing. She moved here 2 years ago, couldn't find anything that was a good fit for her. Josh talked previously about home ownership and the importance of it. It's not available to everyone. I hate to tell you that. Life gets in the way. Health, bad investments, a business that went under, divorce. Home ownership is not available to everyone. So my question is are the developers telling us what we need, or are we telling them what we need? Feels to me like we're not listening. They're we're choosing for the people that are coming here. We're choosing for them what kind of housing they need. Seems a little bass-ackwards to me. So for me, the action plan starts at leadership, and this is tough to say with the mayor's father sitting in the front row. I think this city, it's stunning to me that a community of this size doesn't have a city administrator. It is stunning to me. And it's certainly not a commentary on your daughter, Jim, not at all.
It's stunning to her, too.
Yeah, okay, so, and I know Katie's in favor of it, but I just can't imagine a city of this size not having an administrator just to help along with some of the administrative stuff. Talk about all the legislation that we're talking about that we're blocking ourselves. Maybe a city administrator can help navigate the waters that exist today until we can affect change. Those are things that I think start with leadership, start with listening rather than trying to be the expert.
If I was going to pick 3 things to change or to continue to focus on, I think it'd be focus, align, and then collaborate. So I think focusing on what we really need to do to move things forward and coming up with a plan that we can all agree on, or at least that a majority of us can agree on to move forward, and align on that specific topic. I think the collaboration, and I mentioned that a few panels ago, I think we do a really good job here in Central Wisconsin, but I think there's room to improve. I would agree with Jenny, higher education, right? As a person from NTC here, obviously higher education we think is extremely valuable. When I think about the workforce, I think we need to retain our talent locally, obviously. I think we need to attract as much as we can, but I think education can also help to do more with less people. So we can put in policies. We're working closely with UW Stevens Point on transfer, so students can come in, can start working right away, can come to NTC, get an associate's degree, learn how to do things in a more efficient manner. Industry 4.0 techniques. I know the chamber, right, and all the initiatives that they're doing is very important with Industry 4.0. How can we do more with less? And then having those students transfer to UWSP where they're getting additional skills to help companies grow, help companies innovate, help companies think critically from all levels of employees. So, it's not just, like you said, there aren't people, there isn't a magic pool of people that we can just grab and go. I think we need to be more efficient with what we have too.
All right. So when you go last, you kind of repackage what everyone else said. So as I listened to this, in the sessions this morning, I think there's a few things we want to focus on. So one is set ambitious goals. A lot's at stake, so don't go in it with meagerness. We got to go out there aggressively, a growth mindset. Let's set ambitious goals for those for the communities we serve. The other thing that I hear, and especially, so I come from the De Pere market, where I used to work in the Fox Valley, lived in De Pere area. My kids went to school there. They're talking about how do they expand their schools and building new ones because they don't have enough. Then I get to Wausau, and it's all about compression. So it's a different mindset from where I'm coming from. But what I think some of the elements that are a little bit different is change readiness. When I hire people into this market, I brought talent in from all over the country into work on my teams. They respond and talk about how slow we are to change, not just at our company, but in this community. We are not prepared for change. And for us to be successful, we have to create an environment of change. And that's not easy, but it takes effort. And so I'm going to, so that would be the second point that I'd really reinforce here. And then the third one is rigorous implementation. We can talk strategy all day long, but when you have goals, you set a path forward and you implement with heavy focus, tracking results and course correcting and cycling through that path. And know where you want to go, and not every tactic to every strategy is going to work perfectly. It takes course correction. It takes listening, it takes trial and error, but rigorous implementation is core to making this go. And I think that's sometimes where a lot of these big efforts fall apart, and what separates one group from another is the implementation, because there could be, again, a lot of great ideas, but who's going to make it happen? And it takes more than just one or two people to make it happen. It takes the community at this level. So I'm just summarizing it all up into those three.